Algebra 2, 7.1, we're going to talk about nth roots and rational exponents. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to be given radicals or exponents with rational exponents. So that means fractional exponents. And we're going to be able to switch between the two. And so basically it says that if we have an n be an integer, so it's a nice number, right? 1, 2, 3, -2, -4, 0, all that. And happens to be greater than 1, so now we're talking about, it's up here, we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And let a be a real number, so that a, which is underneath the square root, can be anything it wants to be. If n is odd, which means the exponent, or the root is odd, that means that it's 1, 3, 5, 7. There's always going to be a root. That means there's always an answer. So if n is even, so it's an even root, and a is bigger than 0, there are 2. And if it's equal to 0, the square root, the fourth root of 0 is still just 0. And if it's an even root and the number is less than 0, that means it won't work. There's no real solutions. They're imaginary. It's kind of like think of the square root of -4. You can't do it, right? You get i's. So the biggest takeaways that I want you to take from here is this expression right here. Okay, that's the biggest one, or even just the top one, sorry. We'll talk about this one. So that if I had the nth root of a, this is radical form, I can switch it out with a to the 1 over n power, and this is exponent. So part of your homework is going to be switching from one to the other. So, I'll give an example. If I asked you to do the third root of b, this is the cubed root of b. This can be switched out with b to the 1 over 3 power. Not that bad.
I guess not, but what if it's a bigger number?
Well, okay, what happens if it's bigger numbers? Well, the other one is not using the one we had before, this one that's on the bottom, is that sometimes they switch it up, and I'll just add to it here, is what happens if there is an m in here?
You multiply n.
That means m is on top here.
So what happens?
So here's the thing. This m on the left here actually might not even be here. This m could be on the outside. So I'm going to add one more on this because these are the exact same thing. Where it could be the nth root of a all the way to the m power, which is the same thing as the nth root of a to the m power, which is the same as exponent of a to the m or n. Let's go back and do an example of that. So if I asked you to do the fourth root of c to the 5th power, and I want you to switch that to exponent form, well then that's c to the 5 over 4. Okay? It goes the other way. If I asked you 2 to the 4/7,
Then it'd be
what would it look like?
2, or the square root of
Remember, that's not a
7.
square root.
7,
It's the 7th root of
7th root of 2 to the 4th.
2 to the 4th. Now, that's not the only option. It can be the 7th root of 2 brought to the 4th power. So that 4th power can be inside or outside of the radical. Okay? So there are a couple options. And yes, in the large scheme of things, it won't matter. But when we're trying to evaluate different numbers, it will matter. Okay? So watch this. I'm going to ask you, what is 16 to the 5/4 power. I want you to evaluate this. What is 16 to the 5/4 power? Well, guess what? Switch it to radical form. It might make more sense. That means that this would be the 4th root of 16 to the 5th power. We also can switch it to the 4th root of 16 to the 5th power. Wait, what's the 4th root of 16? What times itself 4 times is 16? It's 2. So that means it's 2 to the 5th power, and then what's 2 to the 5th power?
32.
It's 32. You guys just did that without a calculator.
I'm so smart.
That's how much easier it can be knowing that you can switch from one form to the other. Let's just do this one. Let's evaluate this one. This one, we need to take the cubed root of -8. What's the cubed root of -8? Cubed roots always have an answer. Positive or negative. What times itself 3 times is -8. It's -2 to the 5th power. And what's -2 times -2 times -2 times -2 times -2? It's a -32. So you got to be careful. You just got to know, remember your exponent rules and how to use them. Last thing we want to talk about is, can we solve these? Can you solve an equation
Yes.
where an variable has an exponent? First thing you need to do is just isolate the variable. What is the variable?
5.
It's x to the 5th, not 5, it's x.
So we're talking
I want to get x by itself, but to get x by itself, I need to get x to the 5th by itself, which means get rid of,
the 3, so divide by 3.
so divide by 3. So x to the 5th is equal to -5/3, right? And then the question is, how do you get rid of something to the 5th power? Take the,
Square root,
not square root, that would get rid of a square.
but whatever root it's called.
Yeah, well, what power is it? It's 5. So we take the 5th root of both sides. 5th root of both sides. Those will cancel. So x equals the 5th root of
-5 over.
-5/3. And you can take your calculator and you can figure that out. Remember, when you're taking a root of a fraction, you can take the root of the top and the bottom. So be careful on that.